Hello everyone, my name is Fathmiul, and today I am going to present our paper named Generating Physically Realistic Tertiary Protein Structures with Deep Latent Variable Models Learning over Experimentally Available Structures. And I would like to thank CSBW committee, organizing committee, to provide me such a wonderful opportunity to present our work. So the motivation behind our work is that sophisticated deep neural network has significantly advanced our ability to predict a native structure of a protein amino acid sequence. But going beyond a single structure view is remain challenging. So there is a growing momentum in deep generative model which present an opportunity and an alternative framework to structure space sampling and going beyond the single structure view. The majority of the existing deep generative model works leverage the GAN architecture and are trained over fixed size contact maps or distant matrices. So while rapid advances are being made, but the fundamental question on whether deep generative model can learn to generate physically realistic tertiary structure could be on contact maps or distance map representation need to be addressed. So these are our key contributions. First of all, we extend deep convolutional variational autoencoder to be able to learn from experimentally available tertiary structures of proteins of variable lengths. And we actually use distance matrix representation. We also provide a systematic and detailed analysis that demonstrate that the design of the training data is of primary importance to the ability of our proposed model to learn key characteristics of the tertiary structures. And we also did careful analysis along several metrics that measure the physical realism of generated tertiary structures. So our proposed model, we name it as SPPC-VAE, is built on variational autoencoder mechanism. So basically, a variational autoencoder builds over the autoencoder architectures of encoder and decoder network, each contain one or more layers of neurons or unit. The encoder actually maps the input layer X to the output latent layer Y, and the decoder performs the reverse mapping. But in variational autoencoder, the training process is regularized so that it ensures that the latent space has all the properties that is necessary to generate the data via the decoder part. So as mentioned earlier, our SPP-CVE network model is built over the variational autoencoder architecture. So the network utilizes convolutional layers both in the encoder and decoder to learn the patterns in the 2D distant matrix, which is corresponding to known tertiary structures. And we extend our convolutional variational autoencoder to learn from variant size distance map via the spatial pyramid pooling mechanism, in short SPP, which is a recent work in computer vision field. So at the encoder part, the features pulled by the convolutional layer are passed to the SPP layer. And SPP work by performing pooling operation of different sizes to extract features from the data and process it to be the same size. Like for each SPP layer, we need to set a resolution parameter. We also call it as bin that need to be set. So the larger values corresponding to like higher resolution where smaller features can be identified by the pooling operation, and the number of bin need to be fixed regardless of the data size. So the subletters with the smaller values of n will extract larger features in the data, and when the n will have larger value, it will extract the smaller features as shown in this figure. And this gives the layer like it's a pyramidal structure and allow the model to learn from features of different scale and get a fixed length output as the output of all of this pooling layer is flattened. and concatenated to give an output of a fixed dimension irrespective of the input size. So in this way, using SPP make the model agnostic of the input size. And as our architecture produce tensor that will be of a fixed size, but that are likely to be a lot smaller and possibly of a different size than the target output. So this problem is solved using interpolation. So basically, interpolation work by like using known data, then it use it to estimate values at the unknown points. We use nearest interpolation mode. So these allow reshaping the data while still allowing back propagation to take place. And finally, a final culmination layer is used as a final processing step to allow for better data reconstruction or generation. And as a data set, so all our presented models learned over two-dimensional distance matrix representation of tertiary structures of protein found in Protein Data Bank, PDB. And we utilize a representative view of the PDB obtained via the PCS server. And from there, we leverage one of the pre-compiled data set having good quality tertiary structures. But the problem challenge we face is that if we utilize this data as it is, like this data is having like tertiary structures having lengths vary between 22 and 830 amino acids, our proposed model is unable to learn the key characteristics of tertiary structures like local and distal patterns present in the backbone, short range and long range contact. So as a solution, instead, what we did, we pursue 5 settings. So where we mix with varying percentages of distance matrix of different sizes and resulting in 5 models that we compare along various metrics. So in this slide, we can see the list of all of our 5 models. So we trained these 5 models where we showed the importance of having sufficient representation of varying size distant matrices by exploring basically 3 main settings. In the first setting, we consider that like all the training distance matrices would be of same size. And in the model, we consider like the sizes of 64 by 64, and we are considering as like the baseline model. And in the second setting, the training data set contain 2 types of matrix of size 64 by 64 and size of 72 by 72 at varying percentages. And in the third setting, the training data set includes a third type of matrix of size 90 by 90. And here we show that the loss is tracked over epochs for all of our 5 models, and model converts at around epoch 40. So for evaluate all of our 5 models to check that if they have able to learn directly from the distance map of experimentally available tertiary structure and generate physically realistic distance matrix, we evaluate based on 3 criteria or 3 matrices. First of all, evaluate the presence of backbone, then we check evaluate the presence of short range contacts, and finally the presence of long range contacts. So when come the measuring of backbone contacts, we actually count the consecutive pairs in the distance matrix. And here I want to mention that for the simplicity, we have only considered C alpha atoms. So we check like how many consecutive pair C alpha entries in the distance matrix having the distance which is between 3.6 to 4 Armstrong from each other. So ideally the distance should be like closer to 3.83 Armstrong, but we allow for some variability. So if a distance matrix size is of K, then if the K-1 consecutive C alpha entries are meeting the criteria, then we can say that yes, this distance matrix is considered to have a backbone. Our next measure is of short range contact, where we count the number of IJ entries in the distance maps where no more than 4 position A of each other along the sequence, and the distance between corresponding C alpha pair is no higher than 8 Armstrong. And for measuring of long range contact, we count the number of IJ entries further away in the sequence or backbone, and the distance between corresponding C alpha pair is no higher than 8 Armstrong. And learning the off-backbone contacts that characterize tertiary protein structure is challenging compared to backbone contacts. So this is here we have highlighted some of our results. So first one is like for presence of backbone. So in the first column we have listed all of our model, and in the second column we are showing percentage of backbone over all the distance matrix generated by each model, and the value in the parentheses show this value over subset of distance matrix group by their size, like 64, 72, or 90. So some important observation that we found is that in our baseline model, where all the training distance map is of same size of 64, the 99% of distance matrix generated by this model is containing their backbone. But when we are actually varying the sizes, then there is slightly reduction in the percentage of backbone. For example, in our second model, where 70% training data is having 64 size distance map and 30% is having 72 size, the 96% of the generated distance matrix are having their backbone. Although when we separate the generated distance matrix by their size, like 64 by 64 versus 72 by 72, the corresponding value become 97% and 92%. Although slight reductions are observed as the training data set become more varied, but we can say that like overall, all the models learn their backbone well, at least 93%. And for evaluating the presence of short range contact in the table, we have shows like the number of short range in a distance matrix, and this is like the short range score in the distance matrix. So here we shows actually the earth mover distance between the distribution of number of short range contact and as well as number of short range score over the generated and training data set. Earth mover distance actually measures the similarity between two distribution, and lower the value means they are more similar. And we, for getting this short range score, we actually normalize the number of short range contact in a distance matrix by the size of a distance matrix. And from this column 2 and column 3, overall, we can see that there is low values which provide the evidence that generated data set are similar to the training data set. And this from column 2, we can see that like the lowest value is actually obtained by our base model, which is having fixed distance map. But as the training data set varied, EMD value increased, so they deviate only slightly from the baseline. Like another observation is that like the second lowest is actually our third model, where we are having same equal percentage of two different size data set. And so we can like 50% of 64 size and 50% of 72 size, and the value is close to baseline. So we can say that like proportional representation lowers the EMD value, and it is very close to the value of baseline. And the short range score EMD values also largely follow the same trend. In the same way, we actually evaluate the presence of long range contact, and we actually found the same observations as like short range. Like here, the proportional representation lowered the EMD value in our third model, which is very close to the baseline. And also the long range score follow the same trend. Even an interesting observation is that as we are normalizing here the length, it makes all the models values very close to each other, make them very competitive, and actually suggests that like higher diversity could improve realism of long range contact. So large data set are surely to improve the performance of the model even further. And here we actually visualize some random distance map from the training data set and generated from each of our 5 models, where red to black color scheme is used to indicate higher to lower distance. And the contacts like backbone, short range, and long range visually emerge as like all these black lines. And from this visualization, we can relate the richness of patterns, which further confirming the qualitative and further quantitative analysis that generate distance matrices are highly realistic and resemble the experimentally available tertiary structures. So our results are promising, and some future direction could be like investigate condition in a generated data set on a given amino acid sequence, or it could be scoring of generated structures could be useful. We also wanted to explore like end-to-end framework, where we will include dihedral angles in order to directly generate Cartesian coordinates of tertiary structure that we didn't implement yet. And we also would like to explore graph-based representation. Thank you, everyone.